Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had Kitten Mutation Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. It started with a black kitten being born to a loving mama cat. The mother was a beautiful tuxedo cat with bright emerald eyes. The mother cat's name was Midori, and belonged to a moderately rich couple. Midori had birthed 3 beautiful kittens, a dark ginger, a tuxedo, and one that was pure black, and the only one with his mother's green eyes. The father of the kittens had probably been astray, so it was just them, the kittens, the large ginger Tom, Meow, named by the youngest child, the blue-eyed tuxedo female, named Sky, and lastly, the runt of the litter. The family hadn't let the children name him at first. He was so small, they wanted to soften the blow, since it was unlikely that he would survive the night. Then he did, but the family still wouldn't let the children name him, saying it was unlikely for the cat to survive even a few more days. He was still so small after all. Somehow the kitten survived those first few days, then weeks. When the black kitten had lived 2 weeks and was as healthy as could be, the children were allowed to name him. It was the middle child's turn, as his siblings got to name the other 2, and the parents had named Midori. The boy with black hair and red eyes stared at the little kitten. The vet, his parents, and even his siblings, had all been so sure he wouldn't survive. What are you thinking, Yai? The more Ejiro looked at this little kitten, the more he felt proud of the tiny scrap of fur, and even a bit inspired by him. He made it against all odds. His name is Dikairu, Ejiro told his parents. That was months ago. Now the green cat, his black fur had changed to green over the first few weeks of kittenhood, hid in a box by some trash cans. Almost every day, at this exact time, a human he knew simply as the man of black fur set food out on his porch. Dikairu didn't particularly like stealing, not because of some sort of morality towards humans, they had more than enough, but simply because humans were very territorial, and liked to hurt him if he took their food. This one though, did not. At first Dikairu thought that he was being sneaky. He took the food on the porch when the man had left. The next day, there was more. He figured the human must have been a bit stupid, and just made the same mistake twice, but then it happened again, and again. This time, he was gonna figure out what was going on. When the man set out the food he darted out of his hiding spot, before the man had left. Though he did wait till the man was a decent distance away from the food before going after it. This was how he was going to determine the motives of this strange human. Sure, it was reckless, given that every human he'd ever met had either abandoned or hurt him, but well, curiosity killed the cat, or well, it could. He hoped it didn't. He took a few bites with the man standing there, then looked up, liking his lips. The man was smiling slightly, but he wasn't kicking him, throwing bottles, or trying to stab him yet. Probably the second best human he'd ever met. He took a few more bites, staring at the human, who wasn't even moving, as Dikairu ate his food. Weird. He kept eating, eyes focused on the black-haired man. The man slowly started moving, and Dikairu tensed. He wasn't ready to give up his food yet though, and the man simply sat down. Dikairu took a few more bites. Nothing happened, so he kept eating. After all, he could probably beat the man in a fight with his quirk. Maybe. He actually didn't know what the man's quirk was. Still, he finished the can. He liked his lips. As soon as the man made a move to touch him, he ran off. Best not to push his luck. Aizawa sighed. Well, that had been progress at least. The tiny green kitten he'd been feeding the past few days was extremely skittish. He worried about possible past mistreatment, or abuse, but perhaps it just came from living on the street. Regardless, this was progress, even if the kitten hadn't let Aizawa touch him yet. Of course his day was ruined by his phone ringing, because of Tsukachi calling him. Probably about some new case. He sighed, but picked up the phone. Alright, what do you need my help with now? There's a new vigilante hanging around. We think they have a cat mutation quirk. Straight to the point. Good. If it's a mutation quirk, why are you putting me on the case? We have reason to believe that they're a kid. We hate the idea of potentially ruining their future because of a couple vigilante stuff, so it's better for someone not in the spotlight to handle it. I don't need to babysit some delinquent kid, it's their own fault if they ruin their future. Aizawa didn't really mean that, but still. Come on, Eraser, I know you don't want a child arrested for 2 acts of vigilantism any more than I do. If it's just 2 times, how do you know they're gonna keep going? We don't, but considering they already have a vigilante name, we think it's likely they plan to continue. Fine. What info can you give me? Come to the station, I'll give you the file. After just 2 stunts, I doubt it's big enough to require that. Just tell me, I'm about to go on patrol anyway. Fine, fine. He goes by the name Deku. He has green hair, green eyes, and green clothes. He reportedly has ears and tail, a seemingly standard cat mutation, but there have been some reports of him transforming. Witnesses estimate he is 10 to 12 years old. Seems like a lot of info. How exactly have you not caught this kid yet? Because there isn't a single person with that description in Japan. What? Okay, are you sure the entire description is accurate? Well, none of the witnesses lied during questioning, so it's unlikely, but that's why I'm asking you to find out. Got it, I'll keep an eye out. Any particular area I should watch? Both times he intervened were in your usual area, so there's probably no need to go out of your way, at least till we know more. Got it, Aizawa said, then hung up. Shinso normally didn't do hero crushes. He knew a lot of people had them, but he never had. I mean, his favorite hero was Eraserhead, who was like 40 and looked like a homeless person. So no, he didn't fantasize about being rescued like some damsel in distress, well, until he was rescued, like some damsel in distress. Shinso was being beaten up by his usual bullies, after school in an empty alleyway. They spat their usual venomous insults, and added fresh bruises over the ones that hadn't yet faded from his skin. A part of him wished someone would stop them, though nobody ever did. What's going on here? Said a young, male-sounding voice. Great, another person to gang up on me, was Shinso's immediate thought. We're just showing this villain his place, one of his tormentors told the newcomer. Oh? What did he do? He used his quirk on us. That's not true, he thought, not daring to speak. Shinso let out a whimper. What crime did he commit? Didn't you hear us? Illegal quirk use? You know, I've been reading up on laws, and illegal quirk use is not a crime that qualifies someone as a villain, unless you commit destruction of property, theft, assault, or murder. Can you be lab-led as a villain? Furthermore, humans younger than 18 can't actually be imprisoned for improper quirk use, or even punished legally, due to subsection E of the laws regarding illegal quirk use, because children can't be expected to control their powers. Also, it's illegal to physically hurt someone, unless it's in self-defense, and it is self-defense. He'd kill us otherwise. It still counts as assault, because by the time he was already sufficiently subdued, instead of restraining him and contacting the authorities, which would still make you a vigilante, since I know he didn't attack first, I saw the whole thing, but you wouldn't even be that. This is considered assault and illegal quirk use from you. So either you leave the human alone or I hurt you the way you were hurting him. How do I know he didn't brainwash you? Did his bully sound scared? Shinso still hadn't seen his apparent savior. They would convince him that Shinso was the bad guy, eventually, he was sure. Still, he doubted the boy was all that intimidating. He was right, the boy was in all green, and had cat ears. Oh Kami, he was cute, but this was not the time for a gay panic, so he just looked at the ground again, and hoped the boy wouldn't be convinced to beat him up further. And how would he have done that? He's never met me before, the boy said. That's his quirk, another tormentor said. Here we go, Shinso thought. Hopefully they didn't, claw him or something. Cool, still didn't though, since he's never spoken to me, or touched me, and if all his quirk required was sight, he would have obviously brainwashed you so you would stop beating him. So you should go now, before I contact the police, or beat you up myself. Accidental illegal quirk use would not go on anyone's record, particularly a minor's, but assault definitely would. So, scram. The last word came out like a hiss, but was understandable enough. They left, and the boy approached Shinso. Are you alright? The strong, cute, cat boy asked. Yeah, Shinso said, forcing the words out of his dry mouth. He would completely deny it if anyone asked, but he knew he was probably blushing like a schoolgirl. The boy helped him up. I'm sorry I don't have any medicine on me, but I could walk you home if you want. Shinso nodded dumbly, not trusting himself to speak. He was so out of it he never asked for the cute boy's number. He let out another lovesick sigh into his pillow. He had tried to find the boy online, but none of his searches had yielded any results. Until he finally found a vigilante, of all things, matching the boy's description. Their vigilante name was Deku, and Hitoshi had apparently been his second rescue. So yeah, he had a hero crush now. I mean, can you blame him? The boy was so cool. Looked about his age, and had cat ears. Shinso had to resist the urge to squeal like a schoolgirl into his pillow, and if he had some unofficial merch of the boy commissioned, nobody had to know. Eraserhead didn't see a sign of this Deku person until he was on patrol early in the evening when he found a boy in green talking to a terrified woman. She stood and walked away, leaving Deku to talk to him. He didn't erase the boy's quirk yet. If it was just a cat mutation that wouldn't do anything, if it wasn't, Eraser wanted to keep that trick up his sleeve. Deku, Eraserhead said, simply. You heard of me, black-haired guy? black-haired guy? Name's Eraserhead, brat, I'm a pro hero, he told the boy. Ah cool, yeah, guess I'll go now, the brat said, then ran. Aizawa tried to activate his quirk but lost sight of the boy immediately. If only he had looked a bit lower and had seen the now quirkless Deku. Aizawa sighed, and went home. When he got there, green eyes stared at him from the bushes. It was the cat, staring at him curiously. He smiled slightly. Looks like you have competition for number one problem child, he said to it. Mro? Yeah, there's a new vigilante around, goes by Deku. Don't ask him why he was talking to the cat, now I have to try to earn both or your trust. Mew. Unfortunately I can't just give the boy food, to prove I mean no harm. The cat crawled out slightly from the bushes, not much, but enough that Aizawa could make out its fluffy head. Which the kitten tilted, almost questioningly. Yeah kit, that's right, I don't want to hurt you, Aizawa said, slowly crouching down, and reaching out his hand, not touching the cat, but inviting it to come to him. The kitten went back into the bushes, far enough that Aizawa could only see his eyes. Aizawa sighed, standing. He took one last glance at the bushes, and the cat blinked at him. Aizawa smirked slightly at that. You know what, I'll take it, he said to the cat, before going inside. Deku didn't really know what his plan was, he had only done all that research on laws in a public library, after he was told that vigilantism is illegal. It was, and he learned the ins and outs of vigilantism, learned the difference between criminal, villainy. However, after doing all that tedious research, he had learned that it wasn't illegal for him. Since human laws literally didn't apply to him. He was reading the book, Quirked Animals, 4th edition, by Japan legislator, Yaoyorozu Kanemo. Section 1, Animals and Crime, page 3, paragraph 1, which reads as follows. A quirked animal cannot be legally punished for any crime it commits, unless it is granted honorary citizenship too. This law was determined by the case Nedzu vs. Japan, in which a redacted with an intelligence quirk was prosecuted by law for several crimes committed. The creature's lawyer argued that since Nedzu was not a citizen he could not be punished by Japanese law, which the court agreed, since non-citizens who committed non-violent crimes were not prosecuted by the standards of Japanese law, but were deported and stood trial in their own country. Furthermore, animals could not stand trial, rather the owner of an animal would stand trial for negligence. The prosecution lawyer argued that the nature of Nedzu's quirk made him human in capabilities, simply meaning that he was capable of understanding human laws and customs. The court decided on a compromise that changed laws regarding animal citizenship. Nedzu was not punished for his crimes, but was granted Japanese citizenship, so as an honorary citizen he was legally responsible for any crimes he committed post-gaining citizenship. This set the precedent for laws regarding quirked animals. An animal with a quirk cannot be punished for any crime if they do not have citizenship. However, if any animal suspected of having the requirements to be an honorary citizen, their owner must apply for evaluation of said animal, or they may be charged by the court for negligence, and charged for any crime the quirked animal commits. 2. Honorary citizenship may be granted to animals evaluated to have the minimum intelligence to function as a human being. They will be evaluated on critical thinking, morality, and physical capabilities. So for Deku this meant that since he was not considered a citizen, he could not be punished for his vigilantism. His legal owners were either in prison or dead. The children were in foster care. He tried not to think about Ijiro. He abandoned me. I shouldn't care anymore. I mean, I'm a cat, for goodness sake. Not caring is like what we're known for. Deku blinked back tears, sitting at a computer in a public library, and tried to focus on the triumph of being perfectly untouchable by the law. Sure, he would definitely pass the citizenship test, but only a Japanese citizen can request the test for a quirked animal to become a citizen, which is stupid, but works for him, because it means he can't have been expected to take that test. So he is immune to the law. So he wasn't too worried about the whole vigilante thing. He had just finished making a Google Doc, detailing why he was innocent. He had been working on it since the day before he saved the human with purple hair. He was pretty happy all around. He didn't even have to worry about food, since the black-haired man, Eraserhead, was still feeding his cat self. So he continued to sit at the computer, thinking about what other human stuff he should learn. What could help him survive, and do vigilante stuff? Oh my gosh, he's an idiot. His quirk, to the best of his knowledge, allowed him to transform into mythical creatures related to cats, so long as he had enough energy, and knew about what the myths were. So far he could become a Nico, a beckoning cat, and a Sphinx, but surely there were more cat-related myths. He pulled up a random internet search for cat-related pre-quirk-era mythical creatures. Holy crap, there's so many. Well, this could help with his vigilante work. He was startled out of his thoughts by a ding from the entrance, and Aizawa stood there. Oh, for the love of catnip. Why was this his life? Aizawa had been told not to arrest Deku, but talk him out of vigilantism. He hadn't seen him since the incident with the women, until he got a tip from Tsukachi that someone matching Deku's description was often seen frequenting the computers at the local public library. So that's where he went. Sure enough, there he was. He looked up, seeming a bit panicked, but mostly just done with life. Hey kid, he greeted. You gonna arrest me? Straight to the point. Good. Not right now. I just wanna ask some questions. Okay, he shrugged. You gonna answer? The kid seemed way too chill about this. Not if I don't want to, but I won't lie, if you're worried about that. You've earned that much. Aizawa could live with that, he was good at spotting lies but wasn't infallible. Frankly, he'd prefer no answer to a possible lie. Okay then, why are you a vigilante? Humans are mean. Humans hurt, I feel bad for the creatures humans hurt, even if they're humans. Some kind of environmentalist? What's with the humans thing? He's still human if he has an animal mutation. Maybe he was told he was less than human and just accepted it, like the villains with villainous quirks. Do your parents know what you're doing? I mean, that depends. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Do you believe in heaven, Eraserhead? So dead then? Well fudge. He sighed. I dunno kid, Aizawa said in response to the question. Me either. If there had been any doubt the kid's story was real, it would have disappeared as the boy stared at his desk, pain visible on his face, the sting of grief that never went away. Some kind of relative, or caretaker then? Whoever's taking care of you, do they know? Aizawa said, hoping to distract the kid. Well, there's this guy who gives me food. I'm not sure why, but he... Wait, what about the people you live with? Is this kid living alone or something? People I know. I live in a box, nobody else stays there, since it's so damp. There probably wouldn't be room enough for someone else to stay in there anyway. The kid lives in a box. Okay, so you're homeless. I'm gonna get gray hairs. Yeah well, it's really not as big of a deal as you think, I get plenty of food, that one guy leaves me food, so yeah. So this person gives you food, do you know them? Sorta. I don't think they mean, they haven't tried to hurt me. They tried to touch me, but not in a mean way. Touch you? Aizawa asked carefully, since that could mean a lot of different things. I think he was trying to pet my head, but I ran away, so he didn't try to do that again. Okay, that isn't particularly malicious sounding. The petting thing is weird, but the kid does have a cat mutation, so it could be fine. I'll leave that alone for now. So I take it they don't know you're a vigilante? If the kid wouldn't let them pat his head, I doubt he was willing to tell my secret. Kinda, they know about my vigilante self, but they don't know it's me. Alright, what's your name, kid? He asked. The kid probably wouldn't give his name, but it was worth a shot. Deku? I thought you already knew that. The kid seemed confused. I meant the name you were born with. Yeah. That was the name I was given, well a few weeks after I was born, but it was the first name I got. There's nobody in the system with that name, and your description. System? Like, no person in Japan. Yes, exactly. Well, I'm not in your system. Figures. I wanna know why. Stupid humans, he said simply. Elaborate, Aizawa said. The boy sighed. The humans I used to live with, to them I was just a cat, not a person. I didn't realize I was a person until after, but when they realized I wasn't the perfect little kitten they made me leave. He stood up abruptly. Now I'm gonna go home, the nice man will be giving me my dinner soon, he said, leaving a stunned Aizawa, who stood there in shock because what on earth? That was a lot to unpack. Deku hoped he hadn't given too much away. He didn't want Eraserhead to figure it out before he got dinner that night. He hoped the man wasn't too worried about the living in a box thing, he was just a cat after all. When he got home, Eraserhead looked at him strangely and used his power on him. Nothing happened, of course. Aizawa would never have guessed that Deku was actually a cat, or if he did, then he'd obviously try to kill him. Aizawa was so frustrated. For an instant, everything seemed to make sense. The small green cat eating on his porch. This one guy gives me food, they know about my vigilante self but they don't know it's me. Now I'm gonna go home, the nice man will be giving me my dinner soon. I think he was trying to pet my head, but I ran away, so he didn't try to do that again. Of course, while it was relatively uncommon for people with transformation quirks to have physical augmentations, it was far from unheard of, and if he were a homeless kid, with that sort of quirk, and no way of getting money, Aizawa would absolutely turn into a kitten and eat cat food from strangers. Plus they were both green. The same shade of green. Then it fell apart, he used his quirk on the green kitten and absolutely nothing happened. It seemed so obvious. How was that cat not his, the kid? He sighed and cuddled his husband, who was already asleep, since he was actually a somewhat functioning human being. Guess the cat wasn't secretly a human being at all, and Aizawa was back to having no leads. Shinso was beaten up again, in an alleyway that smelled like dead rats. The same people as usual, but of course, with the usual taunts came some new ones. Catboy isn't gonna save you this time. You probably paid him to pretend to like you. He probably just wanted a new scratching post. Shinso tried to ignore them. He failed. He didn't dare hope for rescue. He knew he could never be that lucky again. I'm sorry, were you talking about me? His voice, said. Yeah, we were. We aren't just gonna leave this time though, so if you want to get rid of us you'll have to actually do something, Catboy. Wait. No. Just go. I don't want you to be hurt too. Shinso thought in a panic. That can be arranged. The boy sounded so calm. Shinso looked up in panic. No. Then Deku transformed. He looked like a tall cat with two tails, he was as big as a leopard, and he looked scraggly and feral. Most of the boys ran away. All but one. I'm not scared of you, said a large boy with some kind of electricity quirk. The boy just swished his tails, and growled at the boy, who was somehow set on fire. OW what the dash, suddenly rats and bugs were biting all over his body. Wait, were those corpses? Shinso was terrified. Please. It hurts. His bully said, burned and bleeding all over. Then leave, a growly voice said, coming from the monster, leave and it will stop, but if I ever see you hurting this human again I will kill you, and manipulate your corpse to do my bidding. The boy ran as fast as humanly possible. Shinso was shaking, frozen in fear. However, as soon as the bully left, there was a small pop, and the cute cat boy was back. Are you gonna hurt me? He asked, voice small, terrified. The cute cat boy shook his head. No, you didn't do anything wrong. And I wouldn't really kill a human and manipulate their corpse, he said sheepishly, but I knew that if I didn't properly scare them they'd just hurt you more when I wasn't there. Oh okay, can I ask, what that was? A Nikomata, a type of Japanese yokai, from the pre-quirk era. But how were you dash? My quirk lets me transform into any mythical creatures so long as they're cat-related, and as long as I've already done research on them. Oh, that's amazing. Holy crap, that's overpowered as heck. Shinso had read a fair bit of those legends during times when he couldn't sleep. Thanks. The boy grinned, and gave off an aura like sunshine. You would have never thought that he had just threatened murder. Why you saved me twice, why? I mean, you already know my quirk, so. Humans are JRKS sometimes. I want them to stop hurting others. You don't think my quirk seems evil? I mean no? Like, could you just explain that to me please? How is brainwashing evil? Like, a quirk that kills someone, or causes mass amounts of damage I get. Even mine I could understand being seen like that, cause manipulating corpses probably looks creepy as heck, but like yours? It doesn't cause damage, or hurt anyone, like, why? Shinso laughed a bit. Yeah, I have no idea, that's just what everyone says. I guess cause I take away free will. But like, other quirks are quite easily capable of murder, isn't killing someone also taking away free will? Shinso laughed harder. The boy looked so confused. What? Nothing really, I'm just happy I guess. I'm glad. Hey, do you want to be friends? Shinso asked hesitantly. The boy's face brightened, to the point of Shinso nearly being blinded with happiness and enthusiasm, then almost immediately fell into line. I would really like that, but trust me, you don't want to be friends with someone like me. The boy said, then he left, and Shinso was alone, wondering what he did wrong. The next day walking home, he thought about it, cause nobody was beating him up, and he had time to think if he wanted. Honestly, when he went over what Deku had said, it didn't really scream, you did something wrong, so much as it screamed, I have trust issues. Honestly, the reaction was kinda like how Shinso thought he would react, if someone told him they wanted to be friends before they knew his quirk, maybe it was something like that? Not a quirk thing probably, since Shinso already knew it, unless there was more to it than that, but whatever it is, made the catboy think Shinso was gonna abandon him, the only person to stand up for him knowing his quirk. He kicked a rock, walking home, it hit a trash can, and there was a small mew. A cat. Well, his day was looking a bit better now. It was green, fluffy. It kinda reminded him of Deku, which made him sad. It actually looked a lot like Deku. They were both green. Deku had a transformational quirk. He looked at the cat. I thought you could only transform into mythical creatures, Deku, Shinso smirked. The cat's eyes widened and he bolted. Wait, Shinso cut off. Deku was gone. Shinso was really confused, but he had a feeling that whatever Deku was afraid of, had something to do with his quirk. I mean, maybe he's projecting, but he was pretty sure. After all, it did make more sense for him to stand up for him like that if he related. A few days later he saw the same green cat, in the same spot, peering out to watch him. Shinso sighed. Dikairu recoiled in fear from being spotted. If I pretend to think you're a normal cat, will you not run this time? He asked. The cat hesitated, and then approached him. He knelt down and let the boy sniff his fingers, like he would a regular cat. This is weird as heck, but at least he isn't running away, Shinso thought, stroking the soft kitten fur. The boy tensed, then relaxed almost immediately, letting out a purr and arching his back into the petting just like a real cat. You like that? Shinso teased. He had heard of people with animal quirks gaining instincts to act like them. He was totally gonna tease Dikairu about this later. Mro. The noise of protest was made as soon as Shinso had stopped petting. He eventually sat down, petting the kitten that he tried to forget was a human, who he had somewhat of a crush on. Not weird. Not weird at all. He sat there for hours, before the kitten friend stood, and went to get off him. He licked his fingers in farewell, and scampered off. Shinso stood, confused by the encounter. Still, he'd be patient, and gain the boy's trust. He tried to ignore the part of his mind that told him the boy was avoiding him, or only hanging around him as a cat, due to the nature of his quirk. Aizawa saw the green cat waiting expectantly on his porch. I'll give you food, if you let me pet you, he said to it. Since cats were always more affectionate when hungry, the cat actually let him pet it a few times, then meowed expectantly. All right, here you go, he said, setting down the cat food. He watched the cat eat in silence. Cats were always more skittish when eating. When it was done it didn't leave, rather sat, and washed its paws. I was so sure you were the vigilante Dikairu, but when I try to erase a quirk, nothing happens, Aizawa sighed, then tried again to erase the cat's quirk, still nothing, so it couldn't be a human with a transformation quirk. The cat looked at him curiously. You'd tell me if you were Dikairu, right, he said. Stressed and concerned about the young vigilante with a concerning home life. After that, he could swear on his scarf, goggles, and husband. The cat looked him in the eyes, and shook his head, before running off. What the heck? Dikairu had decided two things. The first was that Shinso only liked him, and his quirk, because he thought he was a natural-born human. If Dikairu wanted an accurate judgment of whether or not Shinso liked him enough to be his friend, he'd have to see if Shinso liked his cat self. Of course he had hoped Shinso, like Eraserhead, wouldn't recognize him. Fortunately he had agreed to pretend he was a normal cat. Maybe he would do the same if he found out he was a cat, but with a quirk, instead of hurting him like everyone else. After all, Shinso had only figured out that his cat self was also Dikairu, not that he was born that way. Eraserhead was only confused because he tried and failed to confirm his suspicions. Speaking of which, the second thing he decided was that he was getting way too friendly with Eraserhead, despite the fact that he knew the man would abandon him as soon as he figured it out. So he was helping the man along, but decided not to outright tell him, because he took pleasure in the man's confusion. Yeah, that's right, I totally can't be Dikairu, because I'm just a normal cat. He was still a cat, and therefore, still just a bit sadistic, but like, in a cute way. He figured he wouldn't say anything to Shinso, and just only be with him as a cat. That way Shinso could get to know the real him, not some stupid birth defect. Aizawa wasn't entirely sure why he and his husband were in Nedzu's office. The creature sat with his paws folded. Why had his husband convinced him to talk to the rat? I hear you're having some trouble with your vigilante, Aizawa, the rat said pleasantly. Yeah, Aizawa knew that he probably wasn't actually a rat. It was more of a statement of what Aizawa thought of Nedzu's morality than anything else. I have. And you're quite sure the green cat visiting you is not the vigilante, the demon in something, form asked, sipping his tea. How do you, never mind. I thought the boy might have a transformation quirk allowing him to turn into a cat, however when I used my quirk on the cat, nothing happened. I see. Did Nedzu sound disappointed? He dismissed them immediately after, which seemed to confirm that idea. Right after they exited the office, Mike grabbed his arm. Aizawa turned to look at him. Show? What if the kid and the cat are the same person? I already tried dash. I know, but did you use your quirk on the kid? What if he's an actual cat, like Nedzu, but has a quirk? Mike had a tendency for out-of-the-box ideas that were either really stupid or brilliant. In this case it seemed to be the latter. I know I haven't managed it yet, I tried once but lost sight of him immediately. I'll try tonight though. I think that would make a lot of sense. The humans I used to live with, to them I was just a cat, not a person. I didn't realize I was a person until after, but when they realized I wasn't the perfect little kitten they made me leave. Aizawa remembered Dikairu saying that during their second meeting, and that made a lot more sense in the context of him being born a cat. The moment Deku looked into Eraserhead's eyes he knew he had figured out the truth, a second before the man erased his quirk and he became a cat again. So, of course he ran away immediately, so that Eraserhead wouldn't have time to kill him because he was an abomination. He ran away, and turned into his human form, just so he could cry quietly in an alleyway, since cats couldn't shed tears and their crying was a lot louder. A person was coming. He froze, tears still ran down his face, looking at the entrance to the alleyway. It was that boy, with the brainwashing quirk. He came over and sat down near him. When Shinso went on a midnight walk he was not expecting to find his crush, in human form, crying in a dark alleyway. He sat down near the other boy. "Do you want to talk about it?" The boy sniffed. "You'll hate me." No, I could never hate you, you're too pure to hate, I just want to be your friend," Shinso thought. "Why can't you see that?" "Yeah you could, I'm lying to you, I'm lying to everyone, and now the one person who gives me food knows that I'm secretly an abomination and is probably gonna try to kill me like everyone else." No, I'm not gonna kill you. I dunno about this person who gives you food, but I want you to know after what you did to save me, I could never hate you, or think you're an abomination. I don't know how anyone could think that. I am a cat." The boy wailed. "Huh? I am a cat. I was born a black kitten and I have this quirk that makes everyone think I'm human. If they think I'm a cat with a quirk, which I am, they try to kill me, always. And now the one human who feeds me knows I'm a quirked cat." Oh, Shinso was trying to process that. Not the time to worry about that, he is hurting, it's like my villainous quirk, he's expecting me to react badly. So let's not do that. "I don't think you're an abomination," was the first thing Shinso said. Really? You're not gonna try to stab me?" "What the fudge? Who did that?" "I'll stab them." Deku snorted quietly. "Hey. I think I want to be your friend, if you still want to. I tried to spend time with you as my real self, as a cat, but you don't seem to like that, and I thought you'd be mean when you found out the truth, but if you're not, then I want to be friends." "Yeah," Shinso said with a small smile, because that made a lot of sense, and his mind was still reeling from what he'd learned, but he pushed it away for now, and gave his new, only, friend a hug. He was concerned when the boy didn't hug back, so he pulled away. However, the green cat boy just tilted his head to the other side, large cat ears drooping with the force of gravity. "Why'd you let go?" Deku asked innocently. "You didn't hug back, so," Shinso said awkwardly. "Hug back? I don't know how to do that. When I was hugged as a cat I just kinda sat there, or tried to escape." "Right, okay, so," Shinso hugged the boy again, "now you put your arms under mine and put your hands over my shoulder blades, you know dash what that is." "Yeah," Deku said, doing as Shinso told him, then relaxing into the hug. This feels a lot nicer as a human." "Yeah?" Shinso asked, smirking slightly. "Less squished." Deku explained. "Yeah I bet," Shinso said thoughtfully. They stayed like that for a while before Shinso brought up something he said before. "So this other guy who knows, he's trying to kill you?" I don't know. I ran because everyone who knows does, but then you didn't, so I dunno. Maybe you should, I dunno, try to talk to him? I mean he can't be all bad if he was feeding you." "You'd be surprised," Deku said darkly, remembering the man who had tried to light him on fire after seeing him become something as innocent as a beckoning cat. Shinso sighed quietly. "Fair enough, still, maybe give it a shot," he said, thinking of his parents, the only ones who believed in his dream. If you really think I should then I guess I will, after all you're the only friend I've made since I was abandoned." Shinso nodded, hoping for his new friend's sake his instincts were right, and the man who was his friend's only source of food apparently, was a good person. Deku gave a small smile, and a small laugh that sounded wet with emotion. "I should probably go, this is usually when the man gives me food." "Okay, talk soon yeah? Oha. Don't worry about finding me, if I'm not killed then I'll find you tomorrow." "Okay," Shinso said, smiling slightly, before he left. Deku approached the door in human form, and knocked. Unfortunately as soon as the man saw him, he was forced into cat form again, due to the man erasing his quirk, so naturally he ran. The man was prepared this time though, and Deku was wrapped in the man's scarf thingy, about a block from the man's house. He squirmed and let out a piteous mew. "Guess I was right, and this is how I finally die. It isn't the worst way to go. I wonder if I can get one last free meal before he strangles me to death." The man interrupted his thoughts with a sigh. "I'm not gonna hurt you kid," he said, "I'll let you have your quirk back as long as you don't attack me, alright?" He meowed loudly in affirmation. In a second he felt his quirk return, and transformed into his almost human form. "Don't suppose you'd give me dinner before you strangle me to death," he gave the man a sweet smile, and pleading eyes. What? I'm not going to strangle you, kid." The question still stands: if you're gonna try to drown me, burn me alive, stab me to death, or even rip my head off with your bare hands, I don't really mind. I'd just like some food first, please. He tried for the cute face again. Honestly, he was too hungry and emotionally exhausted to give a frick. Aizawa stared at him. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just maybe one of those cans of cat food? Whatever you were planning on giving me before you found out? He asked with a forcibly hopeful tone. It doesn't hurt to try after all. Yeah kid, come on, I'll get you some food. He hummed happily, which was the human equivalent of purring, at least in his opinion, and followed Eraserhead back to his house for some food, before the man would erase his quirk and kill him. Who hurt this child? Stab me to death, the frick. And burn me alive, what the actual heck? Were the gist of Aizawa's thoughts as he led the kid back to his house. Because even if it were some sort of exaggeration, it was still concerning that the kid would even say that. So he discreetly pulled out his phone, and, "Who ya texting?" Deku asked, tail swishing, with no regard for his personal space. If there was any doubt this child is a cat, it'd be gone now, Aizawa thought as the boy's tail flicked him in the face. "My husband, since I wanted to continue talking, I thought I'd give you some human food. I'm assuming you can eat that." "Oh, I can. I've never tried anything other than some pork though." Then he fell silent. "Here kid, you don't need to pretend to be a cat for some food, I can tell you're hungry, and, honestly, it's a good thing you changed back just then, or I would have thought you were some kind of horrible abomination. I mean, a green cat? That'd be horrendous." The man chuckled as he gave the starving cat child the pulled pork that hadn't been sold that day. Why yeah, that would have been crazy," said the boy with a small, fake smile, eating the pork with his fingers. He had tried begging the man for food the same way he had with Ejiro his owners for treats, but the man had taken a look at his fur and chased him away like some sort of demon, until he panicked and transformed into a Nico. It fooled the man into thinking he was human. He felt bad, but was too hungry to care all that much. "Thank you sir," he said politely, before transforming into a cat, and running off. Leaving the man looking concerned at him, with an open mouth, about to say something. "You alright, kid?" Aizawa asked. "I'm not a kid. I'm a cat." "Call me that," Deku said bitterly. The only humans, besides Ejiro, who had been nice to him had thought he was a normal cat, or a human. "Alright, Kit." "Kit?" Deku asked. He'd heard the term before, but didn't know what it meant. It's short for kitten. Cat has negative connotations, being often used by people who don't like cats, and I'm not calling you kitten, since it sounds like a pet name. He cut off as the kid started laughing. "Because of my owners," he wheezed, "I know what a pet name is. But I am a pet so he started laughing again. Aizawa chuckled as well, before looking at the kid curiously. "I thought you didn't have owners." The kid froze, then he sighed, all mirth disappearing from his face. "I used to, but he cut off, shaking his head, and trying to block out the memories, not wanting to break down in front of the man who was surely going to kill him. "I see," Aizawa said, not prying. "Why am I here?" Deku murmured to himself, though Aizawa heard it clearly, "He's gonna kill me, why am I following him?" He started to run, and Aizawa grabbed him with his capture scarf. This time the kid struggled far more than before. He was in a blind panic, and desperate to survive. Aizawa walked closer to the trapped kid. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he told the struggling kid. The kid froze, then looked at him, fear clearly present in his green eyes. "You're not?" the kid asked in a small voice. "No, if I was, I wouldn't bother giving you food." "Why, you're not gonna try to beat me or try experimental drags on me either?" "What the heck, no. That's horrible, and I sincerely hope nobody has ever tried to do that to you. The drags thing was more of an offer, I guess, and I've only been attacked by drunk guys who hate cats, or cats with quirks." "Why is that a thing?" "Okay, no, I'm not gonna hurt you. I like cats, I have one, and I don't care about animals with quirks. For heaven's sake, my boss is Nedzu." The kid nodded, looking calmer. Aizawa let him out and he took a breath. "Okay, yeah, I'm good now," Deku said quietly. "You sure, kid? Call me Kit, please. I'm not human, so I'm not a kid. Alright." They continued the rest of the walk in silence. Then Aizawa opened the door. "Show!" And the little listener, a loud human with yellow hair, said. He seemed to have some kind of voice quirk, since he became quieter when Aizawa used eraser on him. "Yes, now can we have food?" Aizawa asked. "Please." Deku added, dialing up the cute factor to 11 because he was so hungry at this point. He widened his eyes, tilted his head, gave a little, hopeful, smile, and let his cat ears droop to one side. "AWW, of course, little listener," said the yellow-haired guy, letting them inside. Eraserhead looked at him. "You're a manipulative little demon," he said. "And you're giving me food anyway." He stuck his tongue out a tiny bit. Aizawa just sighed. There would be time for a conversation after dinner, for now Deku was just content to know that there are two humans, and Ejiro, but, no, he abandoned him, who know his secret and are content not killing him. One was his new friend, and another was still giving him food. Life was good. Until, of course, Aizawa decided to speak. "All right, Kit. We need to talk." "Yeah, we do, Eraserhead, yellow human. I have never had this before in my life, but now I never want to eat anything else. I need to know what this is," Deku said with his mouth full. Aizawa looked like he was trying not to laugh at the scandalized look on Mick's face. "It's Katsudon, little listener. And my name is Yamada." "Okay, cool. Thank you for the food, Yamada, sir. Sho, this kid is so sweet and polite. He's a cat, and you're giving him food, of course he's being sweet." Deku took another bite of Katsudon, and made an innocent, hummy face at Yamada and Eraserhead. "Problem child, we need to talk about your vigilantism," Aizawa said. "I'm actually untouchable by the law, Eraserhead, sir," Deku said innocently. "Call me Aizawa kid. Also, what do you mean by that? I got this whole Google Doc I made in the library, I can show you." "Alright. I think the library is closed now though. You can use my computer, little listener." "Thank you, sir." When he was handed the computer, he quickly logged in and pulled up his Google Doc, and handed it to Aizawa. Aizawa read all 10 pages, detailing that this cat was absolutely untouchable by the law. "Well fudge," he said aloud, "yeah no, unless you become a citizen we can't do anything." The kid grinned manically. "Well then let's make the kid a citizen," Yamada said. "It's not that simple, only a owner, or guardian, can request the test for citizenship, so unless you guys know someone who will adopt a quirked cat, then I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing," Deku said with a smile. He said it as though he'd won, which he figured he had, since nobody in their right mind would adopt an abomination. Maybe Ejiro when he was 18, they could be like brothers, like the boy had wanted. "I have to make some phone calls," Aizawa said, interrupting him, totally not thinking about Ejiro again. "For Freya's sake I have got to stop doing that. Ejiro has probably forgotten all about me." That thought made him want to cry. Yamada saw this, but assumed his reason for being upset was completely different. "Hey, it'll be okay. I'm sure plenty of people would want a cute cat like you." No, I'm not upset about that," Deku said. "I don't really want to talk about it though." "Ah," Yamada said sympathetically, "I get that, kiddo." A few minutes later Aizawa entered the room again, pulled out his yellow sleeping bag. Stepping into it he stared at Deku. "You're my cat now," he said before getting into his sleeping bag and passing out. That sounded vaguely threatening. "Also? Wait, what?" Deku exclaimed. Why on earth would Aizawa want some abomination rather than a normal cat? It was probably just so that he would become a citizen. Once that happened he'd be thrown out on the street again, Deku thought sourly. "Kiddo, please, what's wrong?" Yamada asked. Deku felt his ears flatten against his head. "You don't want me, you want me to stop giving you paperwork," he said, the bitter words falling unbidden from his mouth. "Oh no. Kid, that's not it at all, duh." Deku looked at him disbelievingly, and Yamada sighed. "I'll tell you a secret, I've been begging Sho, or Aizawa for months to let us adopt a child of our own. He never agreed to it before." "You're a miracle worker, kiddo," Yamada said, surprisingly sincere. "I'm a cat though." Yamada grinned. "That's the beauty of it. Sho has never agreed to adopt anything but cats. That's why you're so special. You're the cat Sho would agree to. And the child I always wanted. You're a cat child." Deku actually laughed at that. Then his face widened in surprise. "What's up, kiddo? I think today's the first time I ever laughed twice in one day." "Gosh, that's depressing. Don't worry, kid. I'll make sure it isn't the last," Yamada said, poking him in the arm playfully. And Deku smiled at that, completely relaxed, for the first time since the Kirishimas had gotten rid of him. Aizawa hid a smile from inside his sleeping bag. He knew Hisashi would be able to talk to the kid in ways that he didn't know how, that's why he let them talk just then. You see, a few minutes before that Aizawa got on a phone call with Nezu. "Aizawa, why the sudden call?" "I'm sure you already know the answer to that question, but whatever. The vigilante is the cat, and he was born a cat. He's smart enough to gain citizenship, considering the legal research he did to prove he shouldn't be punished for vigilantism. I take it, you help with that?" "He'll need a legal guardian," Nezu reminded him. Aizawa sighed. "I may be stupid compared to you, but I know you want me to take him. So fine, he's a bright kid, and Zashi's been bugging me about adoption forever anyway." "Excellent dash. I'm not done." I'll need a 10% pay raise to make up for the time Zashi and I'll be missing in terms of hero work, since we also need to provide for him. Done. Anything else? Yeah, actually, I was thinking you should tutor him till he reaches high school age. Middle schoolers tend to be brats and bullies, more so than high school even. I'm not putting the kid in that kind of environment. Plus, you can probably teach him to pretend to be human better than we can. How so? You'd think the humans themselves would do better at teaching that, Nezu hummed thoughtfully. No, you've already had to adjust to human society. While it comes natural to the rest of us, you had to learn it the same way he will, therefore you're the best one to help him along. Well, alright then, I agree to both your demands, as both are quite logical. Great, how do I adopt a child born as a cat? Leave that to me, he'll be yours in, let us say half an hour. I do still need to finish my supper after all. Good, I'll leave you to it then, Aizawa said, then hung up. The next morning as soon as Aizawa got up for school he saw his new son, Deku, waiting for him anxiously. Alright, what is it kid? Aizawa said. I just... Spit it out, I don't have all day, Aizawa said. He is not good with children, and he realized that as soon as the kid stared at his green shoes, brimming with anxiety. I'm sorry, I'll just dash. No, it's my fault, Aizawa sighed. I really need to get better at this. I care about what you have to say, and I just meant that you don't need to be overly anxious. If you need something, I want to help, alright? Okay. Yesterday I made a friend, after you found out, and I ran away. He was actually the one to tell me I should come here. Who is he? And does he know about your situation? His name is Shinso, he's about my same age, at least my age in human terms, about 12, and he's a boy I saved twice. He knows as much about my situation as you do. Alright, well you're welcome to have him over I guess. Also what do you mean he knows as much as we do? Are there things you aren't telling us, Kit? Nothing but, well as humans put it, trauma. Don't worry, it's nothing that you'll need to bother with. Alright. You know you can talk to me whenever you need to, alright, Kit? Yeah, he said with a tone that didn't convince Aizawa in the slightest. Thank you sir. I'll bring Shinso over after he's done with school. Sounds good, Kit, Aizawa said, then continued, also starting next week you will be tutored by Nezu, so prepare for that. On top of that, you're scheduled to take the intelligence test tomorrow. Oh okay, Deku said, looking overwhelmed. Cool, Aizawa said, then left. Yamada left with him. Later that day they got a phone call from their building manager about excessive noise, due to a loud conversation where someone yelled, "What the EFF?" an hour after they had left. Welp, Yamada thought, that's probably about as good as can be expected considering Sho has no tact, ever. His thoughts were mainly fond, but had just a touch of annoyance to them. After his mental breakdown finished, Deku looked at the clock. It was almost time to go find Shinso. So he did some more research online for more cat-related mythology, to pass the time. He found something called Bast from Egyptian mythology. That wasn't super useful, but Wikipedia led him directly to another cat god, named Sekhmet. Oh ho ho, this will be fun. So he walked down the street, searching for Shinso. He found him being beaten up again. Though, he noticed the bully he had traumatized last time wasn't there. Well, Aizawa and Yamada couldn't be charged with neglect if he did one last act of vigilantism, since they got him the earliest appointment possible for taking the citizenship test. So he tried his brand new form, Sekhmet. Shinso stood, shocked, not because Deku interfered, but because he turned into a woman, with a cat head, and a wave of heat came over the group. Many of his bullies dropped to the ground, covered in blotches and coughing and vomiting, as though instantly overcome with disease. Many caught fire due to the sheer heat, or Deku's fire breath. Leave. Deku said, spitting fire with each word, never hurt this human again. I will protect the one good human here. So leave. Leave and never touch him again. They left. Quickly. As soon as they were gone, Deku was back, in kitten form. Shinso took a breath, because that never got less scary. Then he noticed Deku wasn't moving. He ran over to his friend. Deku? Are you okay? Shinso knelt down, panicked. Deku lifted his head and opened his eyes, just barely. He was clearly exhausted. Shinso scooped him up, holding him close. His friend let out a piteous mew. Shinso frowned. What happened? Why are you exhausted? Are you sick? Shinso was panicked and didn't know what was going on. Deku mewed, and shook his head. Look, I know you want me to know your cat self or whatever, but I need to know what's going on. Can't you just transform? Please? Shinso begged. Deku shook his head again, and squirmed a bit, trying to get down, so Shinso set him down, confused. Deku walked over to some nearby mud, and dipped his paw in it. Unsteady, he started writing. QUIRK_EXHA, Dekairu had written before his paws gave out from underneath him. Quirk exhaustion? Shinso asked. He was given a small nod in response, before the cat closed his eyes. Oh no, you're not allowed to pass out. You are gonna point me in the direction of the place you're living. I assume everything went well with that person who feeds you. Another nod. "'Kay cool, where do I take you?" Shinso asked. Dekairu pointed his nose in a direction, and Shinso picked him up and went whatever way he pointed. When they got to a door, Shinso looked down at the bundle of fur in his arms. "This it?" A nod was his response, so Shinso knocked on the door. Eraserhead opened the door. Shinso felt his jaw drop. Eraserhead? He looked at his tired friend. "Eraserhead's the one who's been giving you food." The man in question chuckled, then looked questioningly at Dekairu in his cat form. "What happened?" "Oh, I was being bullied on the way home, then he used his quirk. It was really terrifying actually. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. But anyway, apparently he did too much and is suffering from quirk exhaustion, so yeah," Shinso said awkwardly. "What exactly is his quirk? Do you know?" "I was under the impression his quirk was simply that he could become anthropomorphic, however, considering that he has never experienced quirk exhaustion before, I assume there's more to it." "Yeah. I don't know that he would want me to tell you, though." Shinso looked down at the adorable sleeping cat in his arms. "You know, I literally just got my boss to hack the government yesterday, so I could adopt him in half an hour, rather than months or years. I think I'm entitled to know my son's quirk," Aizawa said to the stunned purple-haired teen. "Ah, okay," Shinso said, trying to ignore the hack the government part. "Well, he said it was the ability to turn into pre-quirk era mythical creatures, so long as they're related to cats, but I could be wrong, that's just what he told me." "Ah, I see, well you can come in if you want while the kid recovers. Then you two can hang out, or whatever, I'm gonna have a nap." "Why yeah, okay, sounds good." Aizawa hadn't meant to be so short with the kid, but he had been up all night the day before, planning the curriculum for the next school year, not that he was gonna use it. So when he woke up from his nap he was feeling a lot more ready for social interaction. When he got downstairs the purple-haired kid, Shinso, his memory supplied, was pointing a laser pointer at the ground and Dekairu was chasing it. "What?" Shinso saw him, and flushed bright red from embarrassment. "I was bored," he said. Aizawa snorted. "Has the kid recovered enough to use his quirk yet?" the man asked. Shinso shrugged. "Dunno," he said, turning off the laser pointer. "Dekairu, can you turn back yet?" Shinso asked his friend. Who tilted his head, unsurely, then, with a small pop, was back in human form. "I've gotten way too used to this form," was the first thing out of Dekairu's mouth. It was actually uncomfortable to be stuck as a cat. The effects of quirk exhaustion made him feel as though an important part of him was missing. He didn't know how he felt about that, since he'd always viewed his power as a curse, at best a curse that had its advantages, like some anime where the protagonist has some horrible destructive power, but tries to use it for good, totally not something he'd unproductively read from the library. No sir, but it was a curse all the same, so why did being without it make him feel so frustrated? When it was the cause of all his suffering, as well as the suffering of 5 other people dear to him. Plus one, acquaintance? He supposed, since he did feel bad for her as well. Shinso seemed to notice the look on his face. "Hey, that's a good thing. I mean, you can't talk to me in your cat form, and, well you'll be my best friend no matter what, but it still is nice to have the option," the other boy said. Dekairu gave a small smile. "Yeah. I guess it is," he said. Aizawa turned away to hide a smile of his own. He was privately excited to tell his husband that his son had a friend, but he would take that secret to his grave. Dekairu was to be attending UA the next school year, after he finished middle school for the half a year that remained, assuming he could pass the citizenship test. He did of course with flying colors. After all, some of the questions had been things like, if someone gave you a crying baby, would you eat it? Lock it in a room until it stops crying? Give it a bottle? Rip out its heart? Both DNA, in that order. Which he had really wanted to put E4 as a joke, but managed to have enough inner strength to take the question seriously. Still he had passed. And it was time to give him a new identity. "You have to pick a new name," said the human in charge of all the complicated legal documents to make him human. "Dekairu is too much of a cat name." Aizawa knew the person was just being a JRK, since Dekairu was a fine name for a human, but he simply shrugged. "Pick a different name then, kid." Dekairu frowned. He didn't want to pick a new name. Dekairu was his name. Ejiro named him that, the only thing he had left of him. "I know you don't like the collar, but you need to wear it. It will make it so everyone will know your name wherever you go. Plus if you get lost they'll be able to bring you back here, alright Dekairu?" I don't know what I'd do if you got lost, Ejiro had said. Dekairu had mewed softly and suffered the collar, despite how uncomfortable it made him. Months later he was running, trying to use the distraction given to him. Unfortunately, as he ran under a fence, the collar got caught on one of the stray wires. He was in a panic and desperately tried to pull himself free, but fire was blown towards him, and it hit his collar, near his neck, breaking it, letting him run free. He didn't realize until later that he'd left the collar behind. However, he had gotten lost, and he had never found that place again, until the collar was already gone. No human would know his name now, unless he told them, and so he did. Do I have to choose something else? He asked the woman. Yes, now hurry up, she said, playing on her phone. Dekairu decided he would just try to choose something similar. Dekairu wrote, Kiru, he muttered. Ki. Are you? He muttered, trying to change the familiar sounds into something different. Ku, he eventually decided. Deku, he said louder, writing out the rest of the name so it said, Deku. Kid, that's an insult, said the lady, pick something else. Dekairu stared at the paper, frustrated. How about Izuku? Yamada said. Huh? It's written just like Deku, but pronounced differently. Sure, that works, said the woman. Sound good, kid? Dekairu didn't really know what to think. He didn't want to change his name in the first place, but Izuku sounded okay, so he nodded. Great, now you need a last name, unless you want one of their last names, she said, gesturing towards Aizawa and his husband. A last name is like, it's a name your whole family has, right? That's right, Kit, Aizawa said. Could it be Midori? That was my mom's name, Izuku asked. That's a color, kid, the lady said. Oh, Izuku said, disappointed. Hey, that's okay, little listener. What if your last name started with Midori and ended with something else? Izuku looked at his caretaker. He said. That's it. How about Midoriya? Present, Mike said. Mike, Aizawa said, facepalming. I like it, if that's okay then, it's good. It's fine, kid, the lady said. She typed it in, and Izuku Midoriya was now a citizen, and the adopted child of Aizawa and Yamada. Later Izuku sat near his caretakers. He looked up at them, and asked the question that had been bothering him for hours. Are you upset that I didn't take your last name? Aizawa shook his head. No, kid, I was actually planning to ask you not to take one of our names, since you're gonna go to UA this next year, and we're teachers, we'd rather not be accused of favoritism. That's right, little listener. Yamada said, besides, it's super sweet you want to honor your mom like that. Is she still alive? Aizawa asked. Blood, so much blood everywhere. Dekairu hid behind Ejiro's legs, while seeing his mother's life drain out of her, body covered in a violent crimson. The glint of a knife shining in the warm light. No, Izuku choked out. I'm sorry, Kit, Aizawa said, gently ruffling his hair. Thank you, he said. I'm sorry too, Mom, he thought, but didn't say aloud. Soon enough it was time to watch the entrance exams for UA. Both Shinso and Midoriya had gotten in on recommendations. Midoriya was sitting next to his caretakers. When he noticed a redhead. He wasn't sure what made him notice the redhead. Maybe it was something about the way his quirk worked, or about his appearance, the red hair. He had seen his brother dye himself, but he simply stared at them. Which Nizu noticed, of course. That applicant would be one, Ejiro Kirishima. Quite impressive, isn't he? Izuku didn't respond. Ejiro Kirishima. Hi Dekairu, my name is Ejiro, welcome to the family. Don't worry, I won't let them know you have a quirk. I'll protect you, Ejiro said, dyeing his fur black now that the boy had finished with his own, now red, hair. Dekairu meowed piteously. This was unpleasant. I know, but the green fur is kind of a giveaway. Don't worry though, I told them the black dye was just in case I changed my mind. Nobody will know, and they won't ever get rid of you. I don't want to lose you. Dekairu nodded. An obviously human gesture that he had somehow learned. Just, around everyone else, can you try to act like the other cats? Another nod. Move, boy, the father said, holding a knife. Please don't hurt me, Ejiro said, backing away from the drunken man, fear filling his expression, terrified, and leaving Dekairu exposed. It's not you I'm gonna hurt. Wait, please don't. Ejiro cried out as the older man lunged at Dekairu, who ran. Ejiro had broke his promise. He couldn't protect him, after all. Izuku hadn't realized he was hyperventilating, until he felt Aizawa's hand on his shoulder. You alright, Kit? He asked. Why yeah, I'm fine. Do you have a problem with the young Kirishima? I can prevent him from passing if needed. Nedzu said calmly. No. Izuku said quickly. Ejiro had wanted to be a hero so badly. He had always been so upset when he couldn't protect people at school. He wanted to be a hero so badly, and had seemed to gain some confidence in himself since Deku had seen him last. He should pass. I think he'll be a good hero. His quirk is great for protecting people, humans. He'll be a good hero? I look forward to seeing him in class, Deku said. It wasn't a total lie. While part of him felt sick at the sight of his friend, his brother, another part of him was simply happy that the other boy was still following his dreams, and seemingly doing okay, even without Deku. I see, alright then, I'll make sure you two get put in the same class, Nezu said. Izuku didn't want that, but he didn't protest, in fear that if he did the principal would change his mind, and Ejiro wouldn't be allowed in at all. Okay, he said meekly. Aizawa was worried. Deku had been very quiet, ever since he had seen that redhead. You want to talk about it? Aizawa asked, knocking on the door to the kid's bedroom. He had locked himself inside it, the moment he got home. No, was the only response he got. Aizawa sighed, and texted Shinso. Despite it being very irrational, Aizawa had to admit he was slightly jealous of the lavender boy. Deku was always more open with him than with Aizawa or his husband. It was a bit like when a cat would choose a favorite family member, but the one they chose was not the one who fed them or provided for them, and even though the rest of the family cared for the cat just as much, if not more, the cat stubbornly stuck to the side of the one person who didn't really do anything for them. Considering that Deku was a cat, a fact Aizawa often forgot somehow, perhaps the metaphor was even more apt. In any case, the kid seemed to prefer Shinso's company over anyone else's, so when the kid was sad, Aizawa had a habit of inviting Shinso over. The other kid didn't seem to mind, fortunately, and came over just the bomb was. Ready to fight, losers? Kirishima hardened his skin. Deku gave him a look. Why aren't you listening to me? You listened to me better when I was a cat. And I couldn't even talk then. He thought, then again this might be better. Cover me for a sec, he muttered to Kirishima, who nodded. While Kirishima distracted Bakugo, Deku took a moment to think. Bakugo was easily enraged, given how frustrating he found Kirishima. Then he realized, all he had to do was touch the bomb right. Change of plans. Can you handle this? He shouted. Yeah, Kirishima said, blocking Bakugo's blows, but only just barely. You're gonna regret underestimating me, loser? Bakugo screamed, redoubling his attacks. Kirishima was blocking him from hitting Deku though. Of course he actually tries to protect me once I'm a human. Deku thought bitterly. Then shook his head, not the time. Ejiro was close to breaking. Deku decided it was time for an experiment. Could he turn into something, not from a legend, but a different kind of story? He pictured the cat in his mind. His new family had been catching him up on childhood classics, which led him to now, transformed into a pink and purple creature. With a single smile he had won, disappearing with his grin, and appearing on top of the bomb in the villain's lair. Then he turned back into himself. Hero team wins? Somehow young Midoriya got the bomb. All Might said, sounding confused. How did you do that? I thought your quirk was a cat mutation? Was that some sort of deception? Are the ears and tail fake? No? This is only a part of my quirk though, it also has a transformation aspect, as you just saw. Dude! Kirishima ran in, looking very beat up. How did you get the bomb? I didn't even see you leave. Deku just nodded, silently, not trusting himself to speak. You can write? You must have an intelligence quirk or something. That's awesome. Ejiro said, petting his head, looking at him fondly. Think of all the stuff we could do. You could be like a younger brother. A fluffy one. He smiled. Deku purred, rubbing up against him. He would love to have Ejiro as his family. He doesn't seem to like you, Ida said. To Kirishima, once Deku was out of the memory, the three of them were exiting the building, Deku far ahead, not wanting the others to see his face. Yeah. I know, Kirishima said dejected. Do you two have a history? Ida asked. Do you two think you're being quiet? Deku bit back the urge to interject. No. I don't even know the guy. Kirishima said. That shouldn't have rubbed Deku's fur as wrong as it did. He'd probably intentionally avoided telling Kirishima his identity out of fear, and yet, the comment made him furious. Deku snapped, turning his head and glaring at his brother, with burning fury. That's right, you don't know me. So mind your own business and leave me alone. He yelled and ran off, before he could see Kirishima's shocked and hurt expression. He ran blindly, until he found a men's restroom. That had been a fun conversation with Aizawa about human rules and gender separation, and ran into the nearest open stall. He sat on the dirty ground. He stuffed his tail in his mouth to stop anyone from hearing him sob, as tears rolled down his face. He texted his caretakers to let them know he would be late since he was using the bathroom. He allowed the tears to fall and sobs to rack his body. He knew it wasn't fair. He hadn't told Ejiro who he was, but he didn't know if the other boy would remember him. He didn't know if his brother would even love him anymore. After what had happened, Deku couldn't exactly blame him. So he decided to keep his identity a secret. Izuku Midoriya and Ejiro Kirishima, strangers and classmates. Deku sobbed again. He missed the days of his early kittenhood. He missed the lazy days and table scraps. He missed his mom and his siblings. He missed his dad, despite having only briefly met. He missed his life before his curse. Most of all, he missed his older brother, in all but blood. Izuku? Are you in here? It was Hitoshi's voice. Deku didn't trust himself to speak, and still had his tail in his mouth, so he lightly tapped on the stall door. Fortunately, Hitoshi noticed the small knock, then noticed his feet, both too close to the door for someone actually using a toilet. He knew that meant he was using the bathroom stall for privacy rather than the toilet, as Hitoshi had done many times himself when the bullies had become too much. He knocked on the door. He knew Deku might want comfort after that. He'd seen a lot of what happened in the cameras, and though he hadn't heard any of their words, knowing the history as much as he did, Hitoshi could imagine. So he wasn't particularly surprised when the door unlocked. What did surprise Hitoshi was the blood dripping down Deku's chin, mixing with the tears he was shedding. Holy crap! What happened? Is your tail in your mouth? Hitoshi said, kneeling next to his friend. Now that he was closer, he could see that Deku was biting his tail so hard it bled. Don't do that, Hitoshi said gently. He put his hand against his friend's cheek, rubbing his thumb across it in a motion like one might rub a cat's cheek. The gesture was intentionally both human and cat-like. Hopefully it would speak to both sides of the boy in front of him. Indeed, Deku leaned into his touch, biting down harder on his tail as another sob shook his body. He's trying to muffle his sobbing, Hitoshi realized. Let go of your tail, Deku, Hitoshi said calmly, but firm. Please, you'll hurt yourself, more than you already have. He continued petting his cheek with his thumb, wiping away fresh tears, and comforting Deku. Deku shook his head, eyes wide and afraid. You're worried about people hearing you, right? Afraid they'll find you and hurt you? Hitoshi asked. He remembered all too well, putting his fist in his mouth, just so none of his bullies would find him. Deku nodded, blood still dripping down his chin. Nobody will come to hurt you here, Hitoshi promised, and if you want to be quiet because you're embarrassed, I can show you a way to do it without hurting yourself. You just have to let go of your tail, Hitoshi said with a soothing tone. Even though part of him was scared Deku would bite most of his tail completely off, if he kept it like that much longer. Hitoshi continued to slide the cheek of the other boy. Deku finally loosened his grip on his own tail. Hitoshi gently pulled the bloody appendage out of his mouth, and Deku let out a whimper. Once the surprisingly large section of bloody and saliva-covered tail was out of Deku's mouth, he gently put the tail on his lap, not wanting it to get infected from the dirty floor, and he gently pulled Deku close. You can cry into my shirt, it won't be as loud as if it were your hands or something. Just don't bite me, alright? Deku nodded, and sobbed into Hitoshi's shoulder as he played with his hair and rubbed his back. Deku finished crying after some time. Once he did, Hitoshi bandaged his tail. After he was done, Deku blew his nose, and gave Hitoshi a watery smile. Thank you, he said. No worries, Deku. I might miss my old life, but at least my new one gave me Hitoshi. He thought. Once he got to the car, and saw his family's expression turn from annoyance to worry, as they saw his red-rimmed eyes and bandaged tail, he thought, really thought, that maybe this could be his new family, even if it would never replace what he'd lost. Maybe he could be happy about what he'd gained. Maybe he could belong here. He hugged his parents, who were surprised, but reciprocated. You okay, Kit? Aizawa asked. I'm better now, Deku said, then continued after a pause. Thank you, he said, pouring all the gratitude for everything they'd done for him, in those two simple words. Hitoshi watched fondly from the side. After the hug was over, Yamada was smiling broadly, and Aizawa looked over to Hitoshi. You want a ride, kid? Aizawa asked. Yes, please. Hitoshi said. He didn't like the train very much. And if Hitoshi cuddled Deku in the back seat, well, nobody said anything, even if Aizawa did glare at him through the rear-view mirror. Things continued like normal, well, with Deku finally accepting his family, and opening up, until merely a few weeks later, when unfortunately the Yamada-Aizawa family's morals got in the way, and caused them to try and make yet another drastic change. They sat Deku down for a long conversation on the couch. Listen, we were thinking of adopting another kid, Aizawa said. Only if you're okay with it? Yamada said quickly. Dikairu shrugged. Okay. We know that this is. Wait, what do you mean okay? Yamada said. I already share my space with another cat. Dikairu gestured to Aizawa's old cat, Mango, who Dikairu began to see as a grandmother figure. Once she got used to him, another human should be fine. You're sure? Aizawa said. He had been hesitant to agree to it at all, but seeing as Kirishima was in an obviously neglectful home, he'd agreed to it, Dikairu willing. Plus they already had a kid, so his arguments of, we can't handle a child with our jobs were invalid. Yeah? I shared my old home with 3 other cats, and 3 children, including a baby. I don't really have a problem sharing. So long as you still care about me, I'm fine with it. Alright, well there is another thing we should mention, it's Kirishima. Aizawa said, straight to the point, as always. Dikairu froze. I know you don't get along. Yamada said quickly, but when Nizu looked into his home life. He's in a foster home that just has too many kids, he probably isn't getting fed, or any kind of privacy. So if you would allow him to share some of your space dash. Yes. Dikairu interrupted quickly, please, just bring him here. Please. Aizawa blinked in surprise, and Yamada looked at a loss for words. Both of them had assumed they would have to convince him, but this quick acceptance was not what they expected at all. Okay. Kit, we have done everything we can to leave you your privacy regarding your past, but since it seems to involve another of my students, and another kid who will be staying here, I think we need to know what exactly is going on between you two, Aizawa said. If you must know? The Kirishima family was my original owners, Ejiro was my human, the only one who knew that I had a quirk, though he'd assumed it was just intelligence at the time. He was like a brother to me, the only one who wanted me to stay, after finding out I was different. Neither of his parents interrupted. Once he'd stopped speaking, Aizawa made a gesture for him to continue. I don't even know if he remembers me, or if he blames me for what happened, so I never bothered telling him. I see, Aizawa said at length, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I hope you know that you're being an idiot. I'm not. Dikairu said. Yamada sighed, we won't tell him if you don't want us to, but think about it maybe? Dikairu nodded after a moment, I'll think about it. Anyway, you're bringing Kirishima? Yes, if you're okay with it, Aizawa said at length. He didn't want to drop the subject, but also didn't want to lose the precious trust the boy had only recently given him. So he wouldn't tell the red-headed boy, or force his kit to do so, even though he was being incredibly stupid. Just so long as he doesn't find out. Like, don't call me Dikairu when he's around, since he knows the name, that's all. Alright, Aizawa said at length. Why is my kid being such an idiot? He thought, as his husband excitedly chattered to Izuku, about how they were gonna get along great, and how knowing Kirishima would mean that they could decorate beforehand, etc. They did end up going shopping that night, since Yamada was too excited to wait. Izuku used all his knowledge of Kirishima to his advantage, not just in getting him a Crimson Riot poster, and a large bookshelf. Yamada was honestly a bit concerned with the level of knowledge Izuku apparently remembered. He really likes a soft bed. He doesn't like stuff like futons, and sleeping bags, though he would never complain out loud. Noted. Yamada said, at a loss for words. I'm sure the mattress we have in the spare bedroom will be fine, just pick out some blankets, Aizawa said. Go with the bright red comforter. Red is his favorite color, and he tends to run cold. I think it's a side effect of his quirk since it makes his skin like rock. Soon it was time for Aizawa to pick up Kirishima from his former foster home. They were only fostering him for now, to see if the redhead could fit into their family, particularly considering the way Dikairu could hardly be in the same room as Kirishima. Since they apparently hadn't told Kirishima who was coming to get him, which is exactly why he felt the need to do this, his eyes practically burst out of his skull as he saw his homeroom teacher. Mr. Aizawa? Kirishima said, like he couldn't believe his eyes. Yup. Get in the car, kid. Kirishima did. So, robotically, like he was on autopilot? He was still in shock. Are you gonna be okay with this? Aizawa asked. I think so. I was just surprised. You're really gonna foster me? Yes, I will mention it may not be easy, we have another kid after all, Aizawa said. Just one? I can handle that. Kirishima said. Which made sense. The foster home he'd been in wasn't run by bad people, on the contrary it seemed the people were very caring, but no two people could properly care for 20+ children. Particularly in a very small house. It was illogical, in Aizawa's opinion. It is far more important to take care of the children you have than to take in every single child you see. That was why he hadn't thought children were a good idea at first. He didn't know if he could care for one and still do his job as a hero and teacher. Still, Izuku had worked out, they could foster another, since they easily had the room and finances. It's your classmate, Izuku Midoriya. He is adopted, and chose to keep his mother's name. I am aware the two of you don't get along. Kirishima was silent, so Aizawa continued, I also know that it's entirely my son's fault. I don't blame you, but at the same time I'm sure I can find other arrangements if you don't think you can handle it. And no, I think I'll be okay. He tends to avoid me most of the time, so I doubt he'll suddenly decide he wants to fight or something. It's just one other kid, so I'll be fine. Thanks, Mr. Aizawa. Just Aizawa when we aren't at school. Okay, Aizawa, Kirishima said hesitantly. Good, we're here, Aizawa said, as they pulled up to the house. Originally it had 2 guest bedrooms, as Namuri and Tensei liked to stay over a lot, and since those two, particularly when drunk, could not share a room if you wanted to fall asleep before 1 a.m., Aizawa had invested in separate guest bedrooms. Now that Namuri was a teacher and therefore really nearby, and Tensei had too many sidekicks to ever have sleepovers anymore, the bedrooms had gone unused. Until now. Both bedrooms were remodeled for the 2 kids. At least Kirishima's should be by now. Sure enough, when Aizawa opened the door, his husband grinned back at him, sitting next to an equally exhausted Deki, Izuku. PR present, Mike? Kirishima squeaked. Oh yeah, maybe Aizawa should have mentioned that. Just Yamada at home, kiddo. Bet you're surprised I got that grump to marry me, huh? Yeah, Kirishima said, then flushed, no offense sen, or Aizawa. Aizawa waved him off, none taken, kiddo. Then Kirishima saw Izuku. Hi? He said awkwardly. Hey, I'm glad you're here, Izuku said. Wait, really? Kirishima said, surprised. Yeah, there's nowhere else I'd rather you stay, actually, Izuku admitted. Really? I thought you hated me. Kirishima said, really confused. Aizawa really hoped the kid had come to his senses and decided to tell the redhead, but he didn't. I don't hate you. I am really tired, and gonna go to bed, Izuku said, then ran off to his room and shut the door. Well, Aizawa mentally sighed, that could have gone better. An internal voice that sounded a lot like his husband pointed out that it could have gone worse. Aizawa told that voice to shut up. In his head, of course, out loud he just put a hand on Kirishima's shoulder. Come on, kid, I'll show you your room. When Kirishima saw his room, his jaw dropped. It was absolutely perfect. Like take his dream bedroom and make it, like, fashionable? The room had an accented neutral color scheme, the accent being red. In the far corner was a simple twin-sized bed, with a simple headboard of dark-colored wood. On the bed there were white sheets, a simple, but comfortable, black pillow, and a bright red comforter. On the side where the bed met wall long ways, there was a large crimson riot poster. On the other wall, next to the headboard, there was a window, and black curtains. Next to that, in the other far corner was a black desk, and white chair, with a red cushion. Close to the door there was a large, black, bookshelf, already filled with a decent number of books, some of which Kirishima had never read, and others that were already his favorites. In front of the closet there was a large red punching bag. How he began, were his teachers psychic or something? How had they known all of his interests? Izuku picked most of it out, based on what he knew of your preferences. Yamada designed a lot of the rooms, look, since he is interested in interior design, Aizawa explained. How did Midoriya know I like Crimson Riot? Kirishima asked. He has really good memory, is all I'll say, Aizawa answered cryptically. That really didn't answer Kirishima's question. Like, either Midoriya was a stalker, or there was some part of his quirk Kirishima didn't know about. He was interrupted from his thoughts by a quiet meow. An old female cat was sniffing around the room. Kirishima stared at it. This is my cat, Mango, she's a sweetheart, but very old. Be careful with her, alright? Why yeah, Kirishima choked back tears, sorry, I haven't had a cat since mine, died, so, he trailed off, embarrassed as the tears fell down his face, despite his best efforts. Do you want to talk about it? Aizawa asked at length. If you don't mind, Kirishima did want to talk, he missed Dekairu, but Aizawa didn't seem the type for sentimentality. I wouldn't have offered otherwise, Aizawa said. With that, Kirishima sat down, petting Mango. You don't hate animals with, quirks or anything, right? No kid, I don't, Aizawa said, sitting next to him. So I had this cat, right? And well, at first everything was normal, but eventually I realized something was strange about him. Dekairu was smart, Ejiro knew this. He watched in amazement as the cat took the catnip-filled toy, and carefully opened it with his teeth. His siblings bit at the toys wildly, but not Dekairu. He carefully opened the pocket containing the green treat. He ate the leaves and left the rest of the toy perfectly untouched. Bro, why? Ejiro laughed. He wasn't upset, mostly amused, and Dekairu knew that, based on the playful mew he gave. Dude, I don't even know how you managed that. You don't have opposable thumbs. His cat nuzzled him as he laughed. This was good for him, it had been a difficult day at school. His friends often made fun of him, and although he knew they were only joking, it still often hurt. His cat was basically his best friend at this point, which was kinda sad, but really just fine for him. Still, his cat was smart. He didn't realize his cat could understand every word he said, until he was complaining about a hairball Deku had thrown up on the carpet. Since Deku was his cat, he had to clean it up. So he was on his hands and knees being watched by said cat. Dude, I get that this is like an involuntary thing, but I'd really appreciate it if you could do it not on the carpet, he said to the innocent-looking, greenish-black, puffball. Mew, Deku said back. Ejiro gave a small smile as the cat nuzzled him in what almost seemed like appreciation. However, Ejiro noticed after that day Deku never coughed up a hairball, never threw up, or had any kind of accident on the carpet. Ever. Ejiro even saw Deku nudging his brother, pre-hairball coughing, off the carpet so it would throw up its hairball on the wood floor. Ejiro looked on, then looked at Deku. I appreciate it, bro, Ejiro said. Deku blinked at him, tail held high. Ejiro had no idea what that meant, but since his cat could understand him, apparently, he figured he should make more of an effort. An hour of researching cat body language later, he felt like he had a pretty good idea of how it works. His cat was probably watching his sister's homeschool. His parents wanted her to be ahead in everything, reading, writing, speaking. Oh, is my cat trying to learn to read? Ejiro wondered. His cat walked in, a small word card in his jaws. The word said, cat. Deku set it down at his feet, and Ejiro started cracking up. He knew exactly what Deku was doing and it was hilarious. Ejiro's mom often put the things the words were behind the word card, after his sister had read the word. For example, if the word said, orange, after his sister read it, his mother would put it in front of an actual orange. Now, Deku had put himself behind a card that said, cat. Yep, you are a cat, Ejiro said. Trying to regain composure. Deku looked pleased with himself at that. As he should, Kirishima thought. If Deku was really that smart. He was interrupted from his thoughts as Deku ran back out of his room, and came back with another card. This one said boy, and he put it in front of Ejiro, who nodded, stunned. Deku looked even more pleased with himself, and nuzzled him. Holy crap, my cat can read. So obviously he had some kind of intelligence quirk, but then I went to talk to my mom about it. Mom. Kirishima said excitedly. What is it, honey? His mom asked, looking up from playing with his sister. I think Deku has a quirk. He's super smart. Ejiro said. He was excited by the news, but confused as his mom's face fell. Well, I would hope not. It's not a quirk, honey, some animals are just really smart. Besides, if it was a quirk, we'd have to get rid of him, she said. But why? Kirishima asked, what was wrong with his cat having a quirk? It had already been a huge improvement, he never threw up on the carpet, or used the bathroom outside of the litter box, he was the best cat because he could understand him. It's wrong for animals to have powers, unnatural, we would have to get rid of him, and get him fixed so he can never breed. Honestly, I've been thinking of doing that anyway. See, his fur is a greenish tint? That could be the sign of a quirk, just not a dangerous one. If you think he has intelligence on top of that, we might need to put him down. His mother said sadly. And no, you're probably right, I was just joking around, you know? It's a thing the kids at school like to do, you know, try and pass off animals as having quirks, Ejiro lied. Oh. Okay then, anything else, sweetie? And no. Actually yes, can I dye my hair? Kirishima had the beginnings of an idea forming in his brain. Sure. Where did this come from? I dunno, I was thinking of trying it out, you know? Ejiro said sheepishly. To look like Crimson Riot? His mom asked. Yup. Kirishima said, then left, taking his allowance to the store to get hair dye. He got 2 boxes. When Mom asked why, he shrugged and said the black was just in case he changed his mind. The truth is, I used the black hair dye to dye Deku's fur black, and told him to try and hide his intelligence, then everyone else would think he's normal. He was my best friend. I didn't want him to have to go, Ejiro spoke in a small voice. I get that, I'm guessing he wasn't able to hide it? Aizawa asked. No, he was fine. I think the father had a fire-related quirk, or something, because, well, it had started out a normal enough night. His father was drunk, which was scary, since he was a mean drunk. He was ranting, and raving about the principle of UA, since he was an animal with an intelligence quirk. His siblings were nodding along, but Ejiro felt very uncomfortable. Still, while his father had never hit him, he was afraid of the times he'd yelled. Suddenly Dekairu's brother, Meow, started coughing, obviously coughing up a hairball, but this was different. Meow's mouth was glowing red. When the hairball came up it was on fire, and ignited the carpet of the floor. His mother cried out in fright, while his father yelled in rage. Ejiro's young sister obliviously watched, probably thinking the growing fire was pretty. His older brother grabbed a cup of water from the table, smelled it, to make sure it wasn't actually vodka, and dumped it on the flaming hairball. He and Kirishima stomped on the rest of the flames to put them out. When they were finished, Kirishima breathed a sigh of relief. He shouldn't have relaxed then, as he soon realized as his father pulled out the knife and cut off Meow's tiny head in one fell swoop. The female kitten, Sky, seemed to understand what had happened. She transformed into a panther, and leaped at Ejiro's father, who held off her jaws with the knife, as he ripped her throat out with his other hand. The entire family, including the other cats, watched in shocked horror. When the mama cat, Midori, approached the corpse of her two oldest kittens, his father screamed at her, calling her a whore and an abomination, even though Midori had never shown a sign she had a quirk. He made quick work of stabbing her several times in the stomach. Ejiro was horrified, but somehow aware of the small kitten hiding behind his leg, shaking in fear. Then his father turned to Ejiro. "Move, boy," the father said, holding a knife to his throat. "Please don't hurt me," Ejiro said, backing away from the drunken man, fear filling his expression, terrified, and accidentally leaving Dekairu exposed. "It's not you I'm gonna hurt." His father grinned with malice. "Wait. Please. Don't." Ejiro cried out as the older man lunged at Dekairu, who ran. Ejiro had broken his promise. He couldn't protect his best friend, and surrogate younger brother, after all. I had hoped that Dekairu would escape him, but then my father got back, saying he'd finished the job. I didn't want to believe it, so I started going on walks, hoping to find him, then, about a month later, found cat bones, bleached by the sun, and picked over by animals. Near them, I found this, Ejiro said, reaching into his pocket, and pulling out a broken collar, with the name tag, Dekairu. "I should have protected him," Ejiro finished, bitterly. He was surprised when Aizawa pulled him into a hug. "It isn't your fault, I'm sure Dekairu wouldn't blame you. You were just a kid." "I know. I keep the collar as a reminder though, that I'm not letting anyone down again." Aizawa simply nodded, releasing him from the hug. "So what happened after that? Assuming you're comfortable telling me." "No, it's fine. It's good to get it off my chest." Ejiro took a breath. "After that, my father went to prison. I actually testified against him, though the report didn't mention that, because I'm a minor. The lawyers made an argument that since Dekairu had an intelligence quirk it should be considered manslaughter, rather than cruelty to animals. I talked about Dekairu's quirk, and my siblings backed me up in court. Even though I'm pretty sure they never realized he had an intelligence quirk, they just wanted my father in jail for that, since it was extremely traumatic, you know." Aizawa nodded, so he continued. "He got convicted and is still in prison. All his parental rights were relinquished to my mother, so he had no claim over us, but she got sick soon after that, so yeah, now I'm here." "I'm sorry that happened to you," Aizawa said. "Yeah, well. I should get ready for bed," Ejiro said. He was done with vulnerability for today. If he hadn't been, he might have mentioned how much he hated that Midoriya didn't like him, since he reminded him of his dead cat family, but he didn't, so Aizawa nodded and left. Aizawa entered his other son's room to find him knitting. He sat down on the bed next to him, the only other space that wasn't taken up by the billion stuffed animals his husband bought, once the man learned his kit enjoyed soft things. "Kit," he said, softly. "Why yeah?" Izuku said, pausing in his knitting. The scarf he held was about halfway done. It was interesting to see his fascination with playing with yarn that had been the original reason for buying the soft ball, waiting to unravel, turn into a genuine and productive hobby. "I was talking to Kirishima, he was telling me about you," Aizawa said calmly. What did he say?" The kid sounded nervous. "He misses you," Aizawa said simply. He wasn't going to make the kid live through his memories again, by telling him the specific parts of the story Kirishima had revealed. "Ah really? What did you say?" Dekairu was obviously worried that Aizawa would reveal his secret. Aizawa would never admit that he had been tempted to do just that, or just tell the kid he was being an idiot. Considering what he'd been through though, that could alienate his kit. "I only told him that I was sure his cat wouldn't blame him for what happened." "That's good. I don't blame him, I mean. I took his family away." Aizawa shook his head at that. "He doesn't blame you either, and you shouldn't be blamed any more than him." Aizawa paused, not sure how to broach the subject with his kid. "I think you should tell him the truth. He's very sad about you being dead." You're sure he doesn't hate me? At Aizawa's nod he continued, maybe after the USJ? Alrighty, Kit. You don't have to do anything you don't feel comfortable with, but I know he misses you, and only an idiot couldn't see that you miss him. I'll think about it, Deku said. Aizawa lightly placed his hand on the kid's shoulder and nodded, giving the kid a small smile. I'm proud of you, either way. Aizawa really wanted Deku to tell Kirishima the truth because having the other boy back in his life seemed like something that could help heal them both. Just a bit. On the bus to the USJ, Deku sat next to Shinso, hugging him around the middle. Hitoshi, do you think I should tell him? After the field trip Deku asked quietly. They had been talking about what had happened the day before. I think you should, it's obviously bothering you, but I'll support you either way. Deku nodded, and cuddled closer to him. Then a new voice interrupted them. I tend to say what's on my mind, Ribbit. How long have you been together? Since middle school? Well, Hitoshi was in middle school, I was privately tutored, Deku said, before Hitoshi could reply. Hitoshi choked on his own spit, then added. Maybe if you went to a real school you would have known that she meant that we were dating. We are? Deku just looked confused. Hitoshi's heart couldn't take this from the boy he had a crush on. Then Deku continued, what does dating mean again? The frog girl looked like she was trying very hard not to laugh. My bad, Ribbit. How do you not know what dating is? A blonde boy with electric hair asked. Deku shrugged. Hitoshi, still embarrassed, replied for him, because he has the cultural knowledge of a cat, and this is the first time he's been to real school. Okay, but didn't he figure it out from the internet? The electric boy asked. Oh, that? I discovered that a few months ago, and have only really used it to discover laws of quirk usage, and pre-quirk era, urban cat legends, Deku said. The rest of the class, most of whom had some kind of phone computer addiction, stared at him with a mixture of impressed awe and abject horror. Well, that explains why you're such a wuss, sheltered brat, Bakugo said. But what's your excuse for having no friends? The boy with the lightning hair said. He'd obviously struck a nerve, as Bakugo started screaming about how, I have plenty of friends, extra. Sparky's comment upset Bakugo more than he would like to admit, since all of his friends before UA had only been interested in hanging out with him since he was a shoo-in for hero school, and thought he'd remember them once he went pro or something. He wouldn't, but whatever. Tuning out Bakugo's screaming, Kirishima turned to Midoriya. Hey, I wanted to talk to you, Kirishima said. Midoriya looked rather nervous. Kirishima wasn't sure why. About what? Midoriya asked. Kirishima, remembering Aizawa didn't want people knowing about him and Midoriya living with him, spoke in a low voice. Aizawa said you were the one who picked out the stuff for, the room, Kirishima said a bit nervously. Yeah, I did, Midoriya said, sounding like a mix of sheepish and anxious. How did you know? About all that stuff Kirishima asked, biting his lip. Midoriya bit his lip. He looked really anxious. Kirishima was genuinely worried the other boy would run from him. Not that there was anywhere to go. However, after a moment he answered. I'll tell you after the field trip, Midoriya said. Kirishima nodded and gave a small smile. Alrighty, he said. Then he went to chat with Bakugo. The USJ did not go as planned. Deku ended up in the mountain zone. Along with Kaminari and Yaoyorozu. They were fighting a large group of villains, but they were regular thugs, so Deku didn't use his quirk for the time being, wanting to save it for the powerful villains in the main plaza. Can't you do that teleport thing from before? Kaminari yelled. The electric boy was clearly panicking. Do you want me to get quirk exhaustion? Deku snapped, trust me you don't, when I use my quirk too much it forces me to transform into a tiny kitten to recharge my body. A bit like your way mode. Well, you didn't get quick exhaustion when you turned into the Cheshire Cat. Look guys, we need to focus. Midoriya, come over here, Yamamo said. Deku did as he was told, and was covered by a sheet of insulation, which allowed Kaminari to let loose a large amount of electricity. Unfortunately the boy had his brain fried by electricity at this point, so was helpless when another electric user came up from the ground and took him hostage. Deku was far too worried for his father, who was presumably still fighting in the main plaza, so he turned into a ball-tailed cat, and swiftly hit the man upside the head, knocking him out, before turning back into a Nico. Good, I think that takes care of that. Now I think we should try to make our way to the exit, Yaoyorozu said. You should do that. I'm much more worried about the immediate threat against our teacher, and those in the main group. In reality, there is a surprising number of similarities between a clutter of cats and a group of humans. A group of feral cats would usually have the big strong ones, and those would usually be the most aggressive in a group, always looking to fight. The more vulnerable cats, usually the mothers with their kittens, would be tucked away at the center of the group with the most protection. Even still, the mother cats would be the most dedicated and vicious. In this case, the man with the hands on his body, and the purple smoke one, were the two mother cats, the most to lose, and the most dedicated to their cause. Unlike cats, though, the villains would not be looking to protect their young, but to destroy others. Alright, if you say so, Yaoyorozu said, obviously not thinking it was a good idea, but she knew they didn't have the time to argue. With that, Deku ran to the main plaza, just in time to see his father, Aizawa, get his face smashed into the concrete. Deku saw red. He transformed into a creature he never thought he'd use. Akasha. His body was set aflame, yet it didn't hurt him. He walked towards the inhuman creature, because yes, Deku could tell it wasn't human, it was made of human, but seemed half corpse. That was something he could use. Numu, get the flaming brat. The hand villain said. Fortunately, while Deku wasn't able to control the creature completely like a regular corpse, he had enough of a hold over its body to hold it in place. While it was immobilized, he began to eat it. The hand villain was angry, and was probably about to attack Deku himself. Fortunately, another of his classmates, the one with ice and fire, froze the villain before he could do anything. Meanwhile, he continued eating. He probably didn't have the stomach capacity to eat the whole thing, however it seemed that eating its brain was enough to shut it down. It took long enough that it was only due to his training with Aizawa that he didn't switch back into a kitten, and was able to change back into his Nico form. While everyone was distracted, thinking they had won, Kirigiri made a move, making a portal right underneath Bakugo, teleporting him to the other side of the room. You want to die, stupid villain? Ha! Bakugo screamed, running over to him. Unfortunately, the damage was done. Kirigiri was able to warp Shigaraki into the fire zone for a short time, which was enough to melt the villain. The rest of Deku's classmates tried to fight Kirigiri, but it was hopeless, and Deku knew that without the ability to transform into something reasonably powerful, he'd just get in the way. So he checked Aizawa's vitals. Just as he found himself relieved that Aizawa was still very much alive, Shigaraki was warped back, fully thawed. He was scratching his neck. Kids these days are amazing. We have to go, the pros are on their way, but we'll be a laughing stock if we don't kill at least one kid, he said, rushing, hand outstretched, towards Ejiro. Deku yelled, running as fast as his legs would carry him. He barely made it in time, planting his feet, arms outstretched in a posture that can only be described as self-sacrificing and protective, as Shigaraki's hand collided with his chest, right over his heart. His body started dissolving immediately. Ejiro watched from behind him, frozen. Deku had to resist the urge to scream in pain. Even still, tears rolled down his face, and his body shook with the urge to flee, to do anything to get away from the searing pain, but no, he had to protect his brother. After only a couple seconds that felt like eternity for Deku, the feeling stopped. At least, it didn't get worse. Shigaraki's hand was still pressed over his partially dissolved ribs, maybe a few inches from his heart, but his quirk wasn't activated anymore. He saw the villain turn around, removing his hand, and turning to his father, who had one eye open, the other covered in blood. You really are so cool, Eraserhead, Deku heard the villain say. Then there was a gunshot, and everything went foggy and white, then black, as his eyes closed and he lost consciousness. When Aizawa woke, it was dark. Why was it dark? He tried to reach for his phone on the bedside table, but his body wouldn't move. He began to panic, and realized that his eyes were forced closed. Where was he? Had he been kidnapped? What about his husband? His Kit? The pale hand disintegrating flesh right above Deku's heart. Aizawa struggled to keep one eye open, knowing if he didn't, then a child, his Kit, would die. His brain was fuzzy and eyelid almost impossibly heavy, but Ku kept it open till the villain removed his hand, and began walking towards him, before being shot in both legs, and he and the purple villain disappeared. Shota, calm down. You're safe now, Hisashi. Aizawa, who was that? Wait, it's Kirishima. He's probably worried. Come on, Shota, time to be an adult. Aizawa forced himself to calm down. Sorry about that, kiddo? House, not Deku. Kirishima isn't supposed to know that name. What's the kid's first name again? Aizawa was on so many painkillers he could barely think. Midoriya, Kirishima's voice cut off, and Aizawa could hear him begin to sob. Is he alive? Please let him be alive. He's in a coma. He should be waking up soon, but, well, we just don't know. He's stable at least. Shinso is staying with him now. Hisashi explained. Okay, how about the others? The rest of the students? 13? Aside from Izuku, the worst injury was yours, Hisashi said. Okay, that's good, Aizawa said, and they moved on to lighter topics. Midoriya hadn't woken up yet, a full day after Aizawa had returned to class. In fact, he didn't wake up till another day had passed. Once he heard the news, in the form of a text from Aizawa, he ran to his bedside, and couldn't stop himself from blurting out the question that had been bothering him for the entire time Midoriya had been asleep. "Why did you do it?" Huh? Midoriya said, looking almost panicked. "Why did you save me? I thought you didn't like me, but then you say you want me in your home, and are willing to sacrifice yourself for me, even though you avoid me at all costs. Why?" Kirishima was crying now. He remembered catching Midoriya after he'd fallen unconscious, getting an up-close look at the wound he'd taken for him. All he could think of was why had he done it, run to him, shouting his name, and taking that blow. A blow that nearly killed him. Why? Midoriya hesitated, then glanced at Aizawa, who put a hand on his shoulder. Midoriya took a deep breath, then spoke in a soft voice. "I think it's time I tell you the truth." "The truth?" Ejiro asked, confused. "The truth about what?" "Hey, kiddo, you're gonna want to sit down," Yamada told Ejiro. "Oh, okay?" Ejiro said, then sat down on a plastic hospital chair. He scooted himself closer to Dekairu. Dekairu had to take a deep breath. "The truth of who I am, I suppose." At Ejiro's confused look, he turned to Aizawa. "I'm not sure if there's an easy way to do this, maybe, just erase my quirk, and see if he understands. I dunno though, it's been almost a year and I looked a bit different with black fur." Kirishima was very confused. The black fur comment nudged something in his mind, that same irrational part of his mind that kept him walking around looking for his cat. No, he'd seen the body. What was going on? "So, should I erase your quirk now? Or after you explain?" Aizawa asked. "Now is probably best," Midoriya said. Then when Aizawa complied, the human sitting on the bed was gone, replaced with a green kitten, with bright green eyes. I don't understand," Kirishima said. "Why you erased his quirk? Shouldn't he have stayed the same? He shouldn't have been able to transform into something, not with you erasing his quirk, which you're still doing, so he should go back to Dash." Aizawa blinked, then turned to him. "I think you know the answer, kiddo," his teacher said simply, as a cat looked up at him from the hospital bed, with intelligent green eyes. Dekairu was doing a good job at hiding his intelligence from the rest of the Kirishima family, meanwhile Ejiro continued to teach him how to read. It was hard since his cat didn't have opposable thumbs. Eventually, he'd written out the alphabet on a piece of paper, widely spaced out, and would say the letters that Dekairu pointed to. "Ejiro," Kirishima said, then blinked in surprise, before grinning widely. "Yup. That's me. Can you do your name?" He gave Dekairu a treat. Once he did. The first time he was able to do a full sentence was only a few days later. He totally didn't cry as he read the words, "Ejiro is my brother, and I love him," aloud as Dekairu spelt them. He didn't think that Dekairu would ever be able to say his name again. He was dead after all. "Ejiro?" A voice called, as he had turned to say something to the hot blonde boy with the explosion quirk. When he turned, he saw his classmate, and foster sibling, running towards him. He was looking fearful and desperate. Before Kirishima could move, Midoriya was standing right in front of him, as the villain tried to disintegrate his heart. Kirishima could do nothing but hide behind him, and some part of him wondered if this was how Dekairu felt that day, before Kirishima's own fear had gotten the better of him. There was no way, he couldn't. Why did he never come back? As Kirishima began to sob, Midoriya hopped down, unsteady from his injury, and pawed at Kirishima's knee. Dekairu had taken to Kirishima as a favorite when he was a really young kitten. A problem that often happened though, was as the weakest, and run of the litter, it was a long time before he was able to jump onto Ejiro's lap. So instead he often clawed his way up it, which was quite painful for Ejiro, and his claws were sharp enough to get through his quirk at the time. So as soon as Ejiro felt paws on his leg, he would pick the kitten up and place it on his lap. Eventually Dekairu stopped clawing his leg, probably realizing it caused him pain, and rather just pawed at it, to get his attention, so Ejiro would pick him up, and place him on his shoulders or lap, depending on whether he was sitting or standing at the time, and give him a small smile, or sometimes laugh when Dekairu nuzzled him. Eventually though, Dekairu got strong enough to get up on his lap or shoulders on his own. That was a bittersweet day for Ejiro, when Dekairu no longer needed his help. Ejiro had come home. That day he'd been unable to help those girls, and Ishido had run in as he'd stood frozen. He'd kept up an optimistic attitude for his parents, but once he got to his room he sat down on his bed, and cried. His thoughts spiraled down into how much of a failure he was, and that he was a coward, but he was distracted by something on his knee. Dekairu was pawing at it. Ejiro was confused. Dekairu hadn't done that since he was much younger, and unable to make the jump up to Ejiro's lap. Did Dekairu? Do you need food? Kirishima asked. Tears were still running down his face, but he'd been successfully distracted to the point he was no longer sobbing. Dikairu shook his head and pawed at his knees again. Kirishima went through the basic questions, water, litter, outside, etc., for what Dikairu might be wanting. The only question he'd answered yes to was that he wanted something. So Ejiro, feeling frustrated, got out the hiragana chart for Dikairu. Ejiro said. Then turned to Dikairu, who pawed at his knee again. Can't you do it on your own though? Dikairu meowed in a way that could only be described as annoyed, then went back to the hiragana chart. Ejiro liked helping when I was little. It made him happy to pick me up. He is sad now. He should pick me up. That made him happy, it should again. Also your elbows on your legs while you try to stop the sad face water makes it hard to aim for good jumping, was what Ejiro ended up saying aloud as Dikairu pointed to the letters. Dikairu's unusual description of crying made Ejiro laugh, which made Dikairu visibly perk up. I guess I can't argue with that, Ejiro chuckled. Come here. Dikairu happily approached, and pawed at his leg, so Ejiro picked him up. Dikairu started rubbing his face all over him. He began to lick his face with a sandpaper tongue, before eventually settling down, and purring like a motor on Ejiro's lap. After that Dikairu often asked to be picked up by Ejiro when he was upset. Ejiro sometimes said he was too lazy to use his own legs, but didn't mean anything by it. Dikairu knew it too, so he just meowed happily when the other boy picked him up. That gesture now just made Kirishima cry harder. Still he picked up Dikairu, and set the green cat on his lap. Why, you're not dead? You're not dead. He began to laugh, out of sheer happiness. Despite still being in cat form, Dikairu made a face that made it clear he was worried for Ejiro's sanity. He glanced at the floor, obviously wondering if he should jump off Ejiro's lap. Wait, Ejiro said. He didn't want Dikairu to leave. Sorry, I'm just so happy you're back, Ejiro cried. He picked up the green kitten, and held him close. I missed you so much. Holy crap, I can't believe you're alive. Why did you never come back? He was sobbing now. Dikairu hopped down, after squirming out of his arms. For a split second Ejiro had a crazy urge to grab him and hold him again, and to never let him go. He didn't though, he just kept crying, but looked up as Dikairu's human hand was on his knee. I was afraid. I thought I'd be killed. I couldn't come home. I tried to find you a few times, but I couldn't. I couldn't even find my own collar. Eventually I started wondering if you would decide you agreed with your parents, and wanted me to die, just like everyone else did. Dikairu was crying too now. No, Kirishima stood, and pulled his brother into a hug. No, I could never. I looked for you too. I found your collar, I still have it. I found cat bones, and assumed the worst. After that I gave up. Yeah. That was probably my father, Dikairu said. When Kirishima let go of the hug, to ask for an explanation, Dikairu took a deep breath, and began his story. Dikairu ran desperately. Ejiro's father was close behind, trying to kill him. He ran into a few other cats on his way. He meows loudly, panicked, so panicked in fact that he didn't even notice that one of the cats clearly smelled different than the others. The other cat did though. He heard a voice in his head that was not his own thoughts. I can tell by your scent, you are mine. My son. The words weren't human tongue but weren't the vague communication of cats either, rather it was as though the ideas present in the words were communicated to his brain. All Dikairu could think in his panic state was about the man chasing him, and how he desperately needed help. Fortunately it seemed the communication went both ways. As Ejiro's father rounded the corner the rest of the cats thankfully scattered, but his dad remained. More thoughts entered Dikairu's mind. I shall protect my son. His father sent him. How? He has a knife. He will kill anyone who stands in his way. Dikairu thought. This is not my only power. Now, run my kitten, his father thought. Dikairu did so, feeling like a coward, but not about to let his father's sacrifice be wasted. There was a small hole in a wire fence. It was his only hope to escape the human chasing him. He ran to it, and tried to get through, but his collar was caught on one of the wires. Panicked, he cried out as loudly as his lungs were capable of. His father, who'd been breathing fire at the human to keep him at bay, as he shouted about how he knew his son's dumb cat would be an abomination too. Since he was drunk, and since it was dark he clearly thought Dikairu's father was him. His father sent one last thought his way. I'm truly glad I met you. Now, run my kitten, as he blew fire at Dikairu, no at his collar, burning it just enough to make it weak enough Dikairu could pull hard enough to snap it and escape. He ran, glancing back in time to see his father be decapitated. It was only later that he mourned the loss of his collar, the only thing he had to remind him of Ejiro. He tried to go back and find it, He spent months searching, but by the time he got to the place he'd lost it. He could tell by the faint scent of his dad and his own fear scent, this was the place. His collar was gone. Strangely, he could still smell Kirishima in that place, but at the time he'd assumed the scent was mixed with his own because of how soon it had been since he'd left the boy. Nope, it's because I found it, Kirishima said, with a small smile after Deku had finished telling the story. Yeah, Deku said. He sounded down, which made sense considering what he just revealed. Hey, Kirishima said, pulling him into a hug again, what happened to your dad wasn't good. It was really bad, and I'm very sorry that it happened, but I'm also really grateful for what he did. His sacrifice made it so you're here with me now. That means so much to me. Kirishima wasn't crying, but that was probably due to dehydration at this point. Deku on the other hand hadn't finished, and began to sob into his brother's shoulder. After a time he looked up at Ejiro. I'm glad you're here too, he said, making Kirishima smile.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.